Welcome to Ideas in Action, a television series about ideas and their consequences. I'm Jim Glassman. This week, what is to become of city pension plans? With budgets already overburdened and baby boomers retiring, how can local leaders deal with underfunded city pension plans, some of which are facing immediate default? Joining me to explore this topic are Jean Quan. She is the recently elected mayor of Oakland, California. Oakland has just under 500,000 residents. Greg Ballard, he is currently running for re-election as mayor of Indianapolis, Indiana, a city with over 800,000 people. And Anthony Fox, he is serving his first term as mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina, the largest city in the state with over 700,000 residents. The topic this week, the public pension implosion. This is Ideas in Action.
Funding for Ideas in Action is provided by Investors Business Daily. Every stock market cycle is led by America's never-ending stream of innovative new companies and inventions. Investors Business Daily helps investors find these new leaders as they emerge. More information is available at investors.com.
As the country continues to deal with the effects of a recession, cities, just like the federal government, corporations, and families, are facing large budget gaps. A downturn in tax revenue, shrinking state aid, and low stock investment values have left many city services stretched and pension plans dangerously underfunded. Some estimates put the total unfunded local government pension obligations at almost $574 billion, or $14,000 per household. As baby boomers begin to retire, public pension payments are mushrooming. If nothing is done, some major U.S. cities could default on pension payments as soon as 5 years from now. Mayor Quan, you've only been in office since January 3rd, but you've already fired your budget director. Why?
Well, it doesn't have to do with the pensions. In our city, the mayor proposes the budget, and I needed to have people who would move quickly and help me make the process transparent. Cities are going through tough times, so I need to have a fresh approach to educate the community about the budget and the issues facing us.
So you're facing a deficit of what, $40 million?
About $40 million.
And what are you going to do to tackle it?
Combination of things. I'm going to be reorganizing the city and hope to actually do some of the city's activities jointly with other agencies like the school district and the county so that we together can save money. Oakland is one of the largest cities in our county, so I'm actually hoping to sell some of our services to smaller cities surrounding us. And probably the toughest thing is I'll be taking on the public safety, the police pensions. Oakland is one of the few cities in Northern California where our police officers don't pay anything into their pensions. We pay 37 cents on every dollar that I pay them in salary, and that is one of the largest ongoing structural deficits in the budget.
So they make no contribution to their pensions at all. We're going to get to pensions in a second. I want to introduce the other two guests. Mayor Fox, Charlotte has generally been considered over the last few decades one of the most dynamic cities in America, but you have really suffered with this financial collapse, really, I guess, as a banking city. So how are you dealing with your budget?
Well, you deal with it on both sides of the ledger. On the revenue side, we're working very hard to generate more job growth in our city. We're starting to see some signs that the economy is coming back, and that's going to, of course, help the bottom line. On the other side of the ledger, you have to deal with the fact that we have $200 million less this budget year than we had in previous years. And what that inheres is looking at our lines of business, doing things differently. We now pick up our recycling once every 2 weeks instead of once a week. That's going to save us $43 million over the next 10 years. There are other strategies that we're putting in place to deal with problems. And one of the first things I did as mayor was I assigned an efficient and effective government task force to look not only at short-term budget consequences, but long-term, are there issues that we're facing. We've learned that we do have challenges with our public safety pay plan that we're going to have to confront in the future, but we're tackling those problems ahead of the curve, and I think it's served us well. We're AAA bond rated, great city to be in.
And Indianapolis, I think, is also AAA bond rated,
It
correct?
It is.
As is Oakland.
As is Oakland. Oh, that's great. So we're all AAA. But you have some problems in Indianapolis, another city that's generally considered well-run, strong,
Right.
strong in an economic sense. But you've got a problem with your retirement plan, right?
Well, we did have a problem with the retirement plan, actually. We had public safety problems with the retirement plan, the pre-1977 public safety pensions. But when I first became the mayor, I petitioned the state legislature on behalf of really of all the other mayors in the state for the state to pick that up, and they did. So the post-1977 pension plans are well funded, and that is on solid ground. But the pre-1977 was picked up by the state in 2008, so we're in good shape.
And what about the rest of your budget?
The rest, we're balanced budget the last 3 years. Actually, when I got in, we were projecting a $170 million deficit by the year 2012, but we cut 5% of the non-public safety budget right off the bat. We did it again the next year, and of course, we did it again this year. So we actually have reserves. Last year we started a rainy day fund. We're investing, buying equipment, buying snow trucks, buying police cars, and that sort of thing. So we've been okay right now.
But I mean, what are the Indianapolis? What's the public think? Do they feel like they're not getting the kind of services they used to get from you?
No, actually, I would contend that the services are actually better. We really have instituted a culture of efficiency within Indianapolis. We brought in Six Sigma. We actually hired a black belt and are training other black belts within the city. And our department heads have really taken to heart the fact that we do want to cut 5% every year and put some off in reserves. And so they've taken that to heart. They really had no choice in a lot of occasions. But we've been able to do that, and anybody in Indianapolis would tell you the snow's being cleaned a lot better than it ever was before, and certain other services have been much better.
And the snow's really cleaned well in Oakland, as I understand it.
It's one expense I don't have.
But this issue of dealing with the public employees' unions, is that a problem for you?
I think it's different with different unions. I think before the Gray-Davis era, when they increased public pensions, that particularly the non-public safety employees had a fairly fair and well-financed pension. We have CalPERS, a statewide system. Everybody suffered with the basic failure recently of stocks and bonds to keep at the rate that they projected. But we also had a problem with the pre-1950s police pension, but we have as much of a problem with the new pension, which allows pretty much an officer in my city to retire at age 50 at $100,000 a year.
Actually, let's talk about that. There is no contribution made by the officers themselves, but I think a 9% contribution.
The contribution was defined by the state plan as 9% or 9 cents out of 37 cents on every dollar. I don't think that's probably enough, but in our city, the police don't even pay the 9 cents. It's a statewide public safety pension problem. So we inherited something, a statewide problem, but then our city council at the time, way before I got on, also didn't force all employees, especially police, to pay their share. All the other public employees in my city pay their share, if not more.
But the police have refused to pay anything. And so what's your recourse?
Well, we had hoped that they would pay or face layoffs, and we were pretty surprised when they rather see 80 of their younger officers be laid off rather than pay their 9% share. And so I'm still trying to reopen the negotiations. I'm somewhat hopeful that we might come to some compromise.
I want to get to Mayor Fox as well on this, but let me read a quote, Mayor Kwan, from the Police Association in Oakland. Kwan's only consistent stance is to blame the police officers for everything. Yes, that's right. Blame the understaffed, overworked police department that was there to take her report when she was robbed. I have no doubt that if elected, this was before you were elected, Kwan will dismantle our once proud police department and leave it as a shell of its former self. So it's not easy dealing with police.
They were pretty hostile. They and the Prison Guards Union contributed over $400,000 to defeat me, and that's more money than I raised for my entire campaign. So that's a problem. The local police, not so much directly the State Prison Guards Union, because they're some part of the same system. And that's amazing for a state union to intervene in a local election. But the reality is I wrote the ordinance in Oakland that brought more police officers on board to the city than ever in the history of the city. I'm one of the few council members that does ride-alongs. So I'm not hostile to the police. I'm working very hard. I'm trying to get the union to pay their share so we can bring back the late officers.
Mayor Fox, a task force you appointed recently issued a report showing that by 2013, Charlotte will not be able to financially sustain its police and firefighters. What are you going to do about that?
Clearly, we're going to have to do things differently. A 2% growth rate in our pay plan over the next several years won't exceed our ability to pay for it, but it's a question of getting people to the table and working through it.
So is this a pay problem or is it a pension problem for you?
It's a pay problem. It's a benefits problem. We actually, for a starting police officer, for the first 10 years of their service, they can expect a 5% increase every single year on top of a 3% increase that other city staff get. So they've got an 8% run rate over the next several years based on historical projections. That's an unsustainable plan for us, and it's something that we're going to revisit.
There's a lot of talk now, and it's not just at the city level, it's at the state level as well, that promises that were made in the past to public employees are just can't be kept.
Right.
What do you think about breaking promises?
Well, I don't think that's a good idea whatsoever, obviously, but I think within Indiana, the state of Indiana, I can't speak for the governor, obviously I can't do that, but he's obviously, and it's well known nationally that he's managed the state very well. So that right now is not a looming issue for Indiana. It's certainly not for Indianapolis either right now, but the fact that people do negotiate certain things is very difficult in the long term. No question about that. The contracts that people have to negotiate are very, very difficult. We just got done with ASME, the police and the fire within Indianapolis just in the last few months. And you want to make sure that you can handle those contracts. And we've done that so well successfully.
So what kind of increases were you giving?
0 for the next year, and then we go to 1 and 3.3 is generally speaking what it is. But there is also healthcare guarantees in there and that sort of thing, because that's a big issue right now too, because nobody's quite sure what the future is going to look like there.
Now, I know you're not in charge of your own school system,
right,
or your own
right.
11 school systems
Right.
in Indianapolis,
Right.
but obviously you must have some concerns about compensation for teachers. And one of the big problems there is it's hard to attract young people at a high enough pay rate because you're paying older teachers to retire, basically.
Right, and we're going through a lot of education reform within the state, and it'll happen, frankly, this year. The legislature has changed dramatically, again, at Governor Daniels' promotion, if you will. So we'll see a lot of education reform that will address a lot of those issues, I do believe, not only regarding the financial situation for the teachers, but also school choice and those other reforms that other cities are really kind of crying for.
Do you have any specific pieces of advice, let's say one, for the other mayors?
Well, every city is different, so I'm a little hesitant, but I would tell you it's very difficult to make the hard choices, and people are going to be upset with you. Some people are always going to be upset with you, but you must make the hard choices, and I would make them as early as possible, frankly, because you will pay for them later if you don't.
So make the hard choices early. It sounds like you're doing that.
I'm trying to do that. And I want to make it very clear that we're trying to have as good of relationships with the police union as possible. I think they know the election's over. I really need them to look at the budget in the context of the whole budget. Right now, we spend half of our budget on police. And for them not to cover their pension might mean in the future that I have to close parks and libraries. And if I'm worried about public safety, I can't have the number of staffing the officers pitted against parks and rec and libraries, because both of them keep the community safer, and particularly in my city where so much of the crime and violence involves young people. I can't pit services for young people against the police. It doesn't make my city safer.
And what about revenues? Mayor Fox, you talk about a $200 million shortfall. One way to get that is by raising taxes.
Yeah. That is one way to do it.
I'm not advocating it, but and you're not either.
I'm not advocating.
You don't like doing that in North Carolina.
It's not a pleasant thing to do, particularly at a time when you have, in our case, about a 10% unemployment rate in our area. We want to avoid visiting on people who are already strained additional costs. But let me say this: we don't have control over the schools within the city of Charlotte. But that is one place where we're starting to see some real tough decisions. Our school system is facing a $100 million shortfall. Our county, which funds the schools, has a $200 million shortfall like we do. and the state of North Carolina faces a $3.7 billion shortfall. And so you look at what's happening up the food chain, it's not hard to see that our school system is going to face some real pain. And I think that for this country, we will make mistakes, and our children will not forgive us if we don't make the right choices in education, even though it may visit suffering in other parts of our budget. And it means making structural changes to make progress even with less resources, and it means school systems making careful decisions to say that if they need more money, they need to show how the dial is going to move on results at the end of the day for kids. But you know, this is a period of time we could lose 20 years in public education if we're not careful.
But it's not simply, you're not saying it's simply a question of...
It's not resources only.
Of resources, right?
It is not just resources, it is also results and changing some of the processes and procedures. Tenure needs to be on the table, caps on charter schools need to be on the table. I mean, there's a whole host of things, but at the end of the day, we've got to figure this out. We've got to figure it out quick.
You know, it's kind of amazing. All three of you mayors don't have any direct control over your school systems, correct?
I'm planning to have some joint cabinet meetings. In fact, next week I'm having a joint cabinet meeting with the school district to see how we can share resources, how we can help them. California has sunk to the, I think we're only above Mississippi in school funding right now. And particularly Oakland, after state receivership, is more in debt after the state takeover than it was before. So I'm actually trying to go to Sacramento to fight on that because I think that's not fair for the children of our city. But I think if you've got, as I do, the lowest paid teachers in the county and the area, you can't have good schools. And so I've supported more resources for the school. I'm going to do what I can in terms of doing what I call wraparound services, helping them with their fields, helping them with their security, doing some joint facility use to cut down our costs. We're opening a new jointly run library. I think cities don't grow, we don't have safety, we don't have an economic future and good jobs if we have weak school systems. So mayors can't afford to ignore what's happening to their schools.
And you have one tool that I don't think the other mayors do, right?
Well, not only the charter schools, which I think has really helped to really help the other public schools. So competition doesn't hurt. I don't think that's a bad thing.
How many charter schools do you have?
We have 17 right now, and we're increasing.
So what's the total charter population?
Well, I would say that's the city of Indianapolis, but also there are the other chartering authorities within the state. For instance, Ball State University has schools within Indianapolis also. There are wraparounds, if you will. We are very big in public-private partnerships in Indianapolis, and the Chamber of Commerce in Indianapolis, along with some of the mentoring organizations, has really reached out to the schools. Chamber of Commerce has a program called Common Goal, and the intent was to get the graduation rate to 80%. Actually, I believe it was by next year, but we think right now we're at 80%. When you combine the 11 public school systems together, we're there right now at 80%. That doesn't even count the charter schools or the private schools, which obviously have 98 to 100% graduation rates. So it's had some impact. There are pockets where some school systems are not doing as well as others, but collectively as a county, as a city, it has been improving rather dramatically in the last couple of years.
And Mayor Fox, what do you think the role of the federal government should be in helping cities that are in distress right now?
Well, I think one of the things is rethinking the way federal funds are directed. We have a lot of conversation among the U.S. Conference of Mayors about direct local investments, because many times when the federal government adopts a plan, we're there for the big signing, and then the money goes to the states, and then by the time it bubbles around the states, we get drops from the federal government that really aren't able to help us make radical change. We have programs through the federal government like the Community Development Block Grant Funds, the recent Energy Development Block Grant Funds that have done amazing things in cities across the country that are direct investments from the federal government. Local control in this environment is going to be critical, and I really encourage the federal government to focus money directly into cities. There's a lot of talk now about public-private partnerships, about people coming together, and about the country needing to figure out pragmatic solutions to the future. I think one of the biggest challenges we have right now is that we are having to work through unresolved things. This issue of schools and educating not just the kids who come to school ready to learn, but the kids who come to school not ready to learn, that is a community issue, that's a national issue, and it's something that all of us have an investment in. And I think you'll see example after example in North Carolina of the ability of communities to come together and forge alliances to make progress.
And on this issue of federal help, what do you want from the federal government?
Well, I think the federal mandates, the unfunded mandates, is a piece that I think all mayors share that pain. Generally speaking, not just on particular issues, I would say generally speaking. I also, what I want right now...
Would you rather not have the money than have them tell you what to do with it?
No, money's fine. I always tell people, as the mayor, I say this all the time. You can, on a national level, you can debate whether this program should be there or not. But as the mayor, if somebody's going to give you money for a project, you're going to take it. You're going to take it because you can build that dirt road, you can do that bridge, you can help the kids, whatever it might be. But what I'm looking for right now, honestly, is that I hear this from my businesses all the time. I'm looking for consistency, predictability, stability for the business sector. I want consistency and predictability from here in Washington so that our business folks can expand and hire more people.
But you're not going to raise taxes. You're not going to.
We lowered income taxes. We gave back income tax money a couple of years ago, and property taxes are down by a third.
And you, Mayor Kwan, want to raise taxes on marijuana, as I understand it.
It's one of our interesting growth industries we have. We're trying to find what the right level is, both for our dispensaries and for production, and we're working on that. But what I want from the federal
Is that at all controversial in Oakland?
Not
I guess
enough.
not,
It's passed
right?
by 80% both
Right.
times, both
Okay.
initiatives.
It probably would be in Indianapolis.
Might be a little bit more difficult.
Anyway.
What I want from the federal government are a couple of things. I'd like to see them, we're Oakland's a port city, we're one of the major ports of China. I'd like to have them help us improve our port so that we can be an economic generator for the whole country as well as the region. And so infrastructure is very expensive. I'd like the federal government to understand that California, because of our understanding of global warming, is really investing more in public transportation. And right now, I think only 18% of the dollars goes to cities like us for public transportation. And we really need more help on our infrastructure for our public transportation rather than highways. I'm sure they're from states, so they need both. But as a core urban area in the Bay Area, we need money for public transportation because California is trying to prevent sprawl into our agricultural areas and keep our development in our urban core. And lastly, I'd like to see them continue to help the school districts that are most in need because the young people in urban areas are being left far behind. The graduation rate now for African American men in East Oakland is only 30%. We need a lot of help dealing with these kids who have the most needs.
I want to switch gears for a second. Indianapolis has famously done a lot of privatization.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of it goes back to Steve Goldsmith. I think people may know that. He was really a nationally recognized mayor of Indianapolis at the time, and he did certain things like the easy thing to point out is the golf courses where he leased those out, and then they put capital improvements. We just redid those leases actually and got capital improvements as a result. The one we have just done, which was really massive, really the biggest deal in the history of Indianapolis, was we're transferring our water and our wastewater utilities into a public charitable trust called Citizens Energy, and this is what I call a win-win-win-win. We depoliticized the water company, which was very much needed. I get $1.5 billion of debt out of it. I get between $400 to $500 million cash in my hands for dry infrastructure for the roads, the bridges, sidewalks, and alleys, and abandoned homes. And of course, I always say roads don't resurface themselves, so you have to put people to work. Because Citizens already is an energy company, a utility company, they get synergy. So the projected rate increases for the water and wastewater are going to be about 25% less. And on top of that, we just saved consent decree. We're really kind of a model for the U.S. Conference of Mayors. We revised our consent decree, which everybody is going through, over 700 cities, with the EPA and the Department of Justice, and saved an additional $740 million out of our consent decree. So,
consent decree on water?
On the combined sewer overflow.
Okay.
Combined sewer overflows.
Right.
So this is a piece. This is a big deal in the city of Indianapolis, and it really helps the citizens have lower rates. The rates are going to increase anyway, but they're going to increase less. And because it is a sale of assets, I freed up hundreds of millions of dollars worth of money for infrastructure, which every city needs.
So can you do that sort of thing, Mayor Fox?
We do. We have, the recycling
Yeah, you mentioned
arrangement
that.
I mentioned before is a privatized contract. And there are many other examples within Charlotte of areas where we've taken some of our business lines and put them out to bid, and we've actually done better going that direction. We're looking for other opportunities. We haven't quite been able to unload our water system, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that after about how we do that.
Good. We have to wrap, but no, tell me about privatization really quickly in
We've
Oakland.
already subleased our golf courses. I would go a slightly different direction. On my inaugural night, I had 1,000 citizens come to City Hall to sign up to volunteer for the city and for the schools.
That's great. So that's real privatization.
Yes.
Private people helping the public sector. Thank you so much, Mayor Quam. Thank you, Mayor Fox. Thank you, Mayor Ballard.
Thank you.
And that's it for this week's Ideas in Action. I'm Jim Glassman. Thanks for watching. Keep in mind that you can watch Ideas in Action whenever and wherever you want. To watch highlights or complete programs, just go to ideasinactiontv.com or download a podcast from the iTunes Store. Ideas in Action, because ideas have consequences.
For more information, visit us at ideasinactiontv.com. Funding for Ideas in Action is provided by Investors Business Daily. Every stock market cycle is led by America's never-ending stream of innovative new companies and inventions. Investors Business Daily helps investors find these new leaders as they emerge. More information is available at investors.com. This program is a production of Grace Creek Media and the George W. Bush Institute, which are solely responsible for its content.